So, welcome to the Painters Motivating Painters monthly review for June 2025. Apologies for a bit of delay. It just kind of worked out that our first recording day of the month was the 6th, and then the Grand Prix was on and various other things. So, we're 2 weeks delayed, but still got plenty of nice figures to review. Nice quiet month as well, so we might even have a little bit of extra time for each of our people who have submitted. Starting off straight away with John Israel. Most likely feedback on the NMM and whether or not to desaturate the NMM more than the blue. Any other feedback on this infinity tag of some description? Yeah, so this is nice. It's interesting to see a different take on these figures. Like you've submitted a lot in the kind of the same vein, um, and I think that so there's a kind of two different metals you got going on. The gun looks more bluish steel, and then the kind of tail fins or whatever these are look more like iron, kind of like warm metal. And also, I think you did that a bit more on the legs. So I definitely think having the kind of suit parts of the armor be more in a warm tone is kind of nice because they gel a little bit more with it. The spiky things coming at the back, I think they could just have, they look a little bit like it's hard to tell because you used like a warm gray, which makes them look a little bit dusty. And the way you have kind of done the weathering, or not the weathering, the reflections, like they're kind of like rough steel. So it makes them look a little bit like it's hard to tell whether this is kind of like weathering or reflections, especially the way it's kind of like very strong towards the end. Like you could imagine if this was like some sort of it was steel that was painted black and then it's like worn off, something like that. So I think you could have more like extreme edge highlights on these little spiky things, um, and I think that would make them look more metallic. Similarly, up on the backpack here, like some of these little kind of like pouches or panels in the back almost look like they're like again they're kind of dusty at the bottom as opposed to being like that's a reflective finish because you haven't gone quite high enough. Like you probably still want to go up to a white or a near white, even though because otherwise it looks like it's brown rather than it being metal. Does that make sense? Um, the blue steel on the gun is fine. I mean, if you're going for like having that contrast more, and maybe it's meant to be pointed a bit skywards, uh, just like be kind of mindful about how desaturated you want to go. Like one of the barrels that's near to his shoulder is quite blue, whereas like some of the other ones are much more into the gray area. And obviously having an orange, your figure's very desaturated anyway, but the true colors are like orange and blue. So like the blue looks bluer because the rest of the figure is orange. Um, like I would try and think about it more like it's just a very cold gray. Like if you desaturate the blue until you can barely tell it was blue, but then in contrasting um with your mech, it'll be like a cold steel looking reflection. And then yeah, it might be and also be like think about how you want to use that to show different metals because like obviously if it's I don't know if the gun is made of some sort of hardened steel or some sort of hyper high tech metal, and then the backpack is just standard iron. You can use warm and cold contrast to show that, but you still want to just have you can use almost the exact same run of level uh, or value there if you like go for like a warm gray and a cold gray that way. And just like to get like a different looking metal but still have that metallic sheen to it. It looks really cool. I really like actually the kind of like orange, the like gun housing has this like orangey, more reddish color to it. I think that and on his weird, his pointless little pistol, he literally has a sidearm even though he's a giant robot. But anyway, I like that. I think it might be cool to have a few more bits of that, like just the odd panel here and there, because that's actually the most saturated color you got on the entire fig, apart from this like magenta stripe. Um, and yeah, and nice work on the numbering on the base and that kind of thing. It's looking quite well. Over to you, Jim.
Yeah, I agree. Really like the. Oh, sorry, can you mute me, dude? Yeah, the desaturation of the armor looks really nice. I do enjoy that a lot. You've got some great contrast in it as well, like these really deep shadows and interference colors coming up from the bottom, which is really great. We've seen that from you before, and that's really nice. It's super smooth. The transitions are buttery smooth. So yeah, the orange armor is looking wonderful. So as Matt was saying about the The metals, yeah, I think these bits are. I'm not sure if they're supposed to be metal or if they're just supposed to be like a black rubber or something. So if they're going to be black rubber, then I'd probably introduce a bit more black because there's too much grey there. You want, if it's supposed to be like a highlighted black, then you've got to leave 50% of the area black for it to still read as black. But if this is supposed to be metal, then I'd punch up the highlights sort of in the middle of these bands. If we zoom in, you want to be sort of in the middle of these, going up to another two or three levels of highlight, basically. So what we're seeing is like really, really bright highlights on the armor, but then when you look at the NMM, it's quite noticeably duller than sort of the armor. So you're trying to sell this as being like highly reflective, and this is highly reflective, and the highlights are much brighter down here. So I think you kind of, as Matt said, you need to push the highlights on it for one, but two, also you've got like probably a bit too much shadow. That's like probably 25%, if not more, is just like black. So I'd broaden the midtones out there, push the highlights some, but also with large flat areas, it's nice to have a couple of highlights. So you'd have like one main highlight, and then you could just have a smaller one sort of nestled in this sort of mid shadow area. Same with down here, you can just have a smaller area of shadow. Just break it up, because light is quite random in the way it behaves. Like sometimes if you have like a super smooth object, like a butter knife or something, and you hold it in the light just right, it will just look the same the whole time. But that's hyper boring. We can also turn the knife around a little bit, and you get lots of bounce lights. You'll get shadows and you'll get reflections off of it. So when you're trying to like sell the idea that something is metal, it always looks better if you're doing more than one reflection, if that makes sense. So just having one run from your darkest shadow to your brightest highlight is technically correct, but it doesn't sell very well on miniatures sometimes. Sometimes it does, other times it doesn't. And in this instance, I think it would be better if you had a couple of reflections in there, just to sell that it's metal. But yeah, as Matt said, like with the blues, I agree with what he said there, and the reds. Great run of colour and tiny edge highlighting on those. So yeah, a lot's going very, very well for it again. The interference colours down the bottom, which I mentioned before, really, really cool. And yeah, lovely work on the base again. I don't recognise these bases, but it's a great colour choice between the orange and the blue again. So it's sort of tying in with the dusty blues up in the gun as well. So yeah, really nice work, John. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next month, no doubt. Okay, moving on to Tanner next, who's done Spartan. These are the warriors from Halo, isn't it? So using speed paint from Andy Painter, and then just telling us about the scaling of the rubble, which worked really, really well. I think that looks really great. That base, really, really nice. Awesome use of the snow. Not an easy thing to do, and I like the way you've incorporated the rusts into it, and you've got streaking. And even like how some of the snow looks kind of slushy as well. Really, really cool. Nice details. Then moving on to the model itself, I like the palette that you've used. I mean, these guys, if you've ever played Halo Reach, you can like customize your own Spartan, and you can have his armor, primary and secondary colors, like whatever you want. So you've gone for like a pretty like night opsy, like stealthy kind of outfit here, which is no problem with any of that. That's all very cool. So I like the way you've coloured it, but it kind of looks like it's struggling to really define its shapes in a lot of places, and I can't really make out whether that's the model itself, whether it's just got really rough edges and it's difficult to edge highlight straight, or whether the actual finished surfaces of the model are not smooth and they've got these little jagged edges in them, or whether you've painted all of those details on. So if it's the model itself, then it's completely excusable, but you just have to take those extra steps to smooth stuff out, you know, using your fillers and your sanders and stuff, and just getting things nice and smooth and crisp before you start painting it. But if it's the actual brush strokes, I think you might have gone a little bit too heavy-handed in putting like the paintbrush texture in there, because it's sort of becoming a bit chaotic to read. You can't tell where one armor panel starts and the other one finishes, if that makes sense. And also there's a lot of black in there, but you can vary black massively, right? You can highlight it with whatever color you want. So you can go up through the grey spectrum, you can go up through the ivory spectrum, in any neutral tone, basically going up away from black. As long as 50% of the area is black, it will still read as black. But you've kind of treated them all pretty much the same. So between like the gun and the fingers, it's hard to distinguish where they separate. You've got these pouches and packs and stuff all over him, as the Spartans do, and it's just struggling to redefine it. And the black is really really dark. So where you've got your like occlusion shadows where things touch each other, it's kind of getting a little bit lost. So if there's anything you can do to sort of differentiate the highlighting on the black, so it still reads as black, but just like a different tone of black, that would really, really help it. But it's a great level of detail that's gone into it. I mean, funnily enough, like these sections look a bit better because it's sort of into the green a little bit here, and then this one's a little bit into the brown, and then that one's more grey. You see what I mean? It's the back of it's working a bit better where you've differentiated it, but on the front it's not reading quite as well. So if there's anything you can do to differentiate those, that'll be great. No idea how you did the visor, but that looks awesome. Really, really great colours in there. So that's lovely, and the reflections all perfect. So that's really, really nice. And then the final thing was good use of I think they're transfers that you've put on there. But if this is like quite battle damaged and worn, then you can just use a sponge or a very small brush or something, and just introduce a bit of the base color that's beneath them, and just sort of tamper with them, just so it looks like they're slightly scratched and it's showing the paint that's underneath them. But other than that, yeah, really, really cool, really impressive. I love the way the scaling worked out with the base as well. So, yeah, really, really good overall. Nice work, Tanner. Thank you. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, I agree. Basing really cool. Like you would not know, like very creative use of like different scaled figures here to get a pleasing result. Um, the armor panel or color choices are cool. It reminds you of, is there like a Halo game where you're like a policeman sort of thing? And I thought that was like kind of the look you were going for. But yeah, and the visor is really good as well. Yeah, and I agree with Jim on that sort of. So he looks like he's kind of wearing this because it fits the environment he's in, because he's in like, you know, Arctic camo, so it's like this blue gray and black. But then you run into the issue where like camo makes things hard to see. So like you don't really want that. You have to kind of fudge it such that the camo doesn't work, basically. Um, so like Jim said, if you just were to pick out a bunch of the edges in your base color, it looks like, so you said you use speed paint. So I'd say a lot of this kind of mottling is either because that like cools kind of randomly ish. And also then maybe I think some dry brushing over top of it or underneath it that's showing through. And it actually worked very well for this particular figure. Like you can see, it's really sucked itself into the crevices and it's not pulling so much in the upper area. So that was definitely the right tool to use. But you still, because it is semi-random, you end up with these issues where, for example, you can have like, oh, this bit has a shadow here, and the next bit that should be different looking still also has a shadow there. So you come back in and do like a line, like I'm looking at his like belly and his crotch. Like there's obviously two different bits there, but like it just looks like one kind of undifferentiated mass. And if you just came back with your base tone or just dry brush a little bit, call out those edges. Similarly, the gun is kind of blending in with his shoulder panels and stuff. So you want to basically not have two areas that are adjacent to each other that have the same color. Like if you have like a dark gray and a dark gray, you want to put a light gray in between them, or whatever way it works out. Maybe if it's two light areas, put a dark line in between them. And I'd say that's like probably the next step where I would go with this. Like it already is looking quite well, and then just like more carefully applying lights and shadows to some of the panels would really just like quick kick it up the next step. But I think it's really nice. I love the rusty rebar and stuff. I think that orange contrasts really nicely with your kind of navy blue as well. So good job all right. Osland Meloch has this hilarious Great Unclean one with a cat face, which I don't know. There's no explanation for it whatsoever. I think it's even better to not have that. It's just a weird cat boy. It looks really, really nice. I think the conversion's really good. Obviously, it's very unique. Like, I mean, every single one of these, it's a cat. And it has that, like, it looks like a really kind of overweight, somewhat unhealthy cat with demon teeth. So it's, like, perfect. I don't know if you sculpted this yourself or printed it and glued it on or what, but it looks like pretty much perfect in terms of like how it gels in with the figure. Uh, but the painting on it, like it stands out immensely because obviously this is like bright orange. The eyes look really good and the fangs, by the way. But everything else on it is these like dark, sort of like cool tones, purples, blue, green. So it might be nice to have some more of that orange or orangish tones around the place. What you would generally do see people do here is like if you have a figure in that classic like old GW pose where they're like this, you do like their head one color and then like a bit on each hand, so you have like a triangle going there, or you could have like a bit going like you could have a bit on their legs. He's a bit awkward because he doesn't have different. You can't see both of his legs. But you could do like his toenails and his fingernails in that kind of color, or like work in some of like the fat, like the teeth or the little eye he has in his hand. You know, he's got that weird eye. He's got a mouth arm on his left arm. It's got an eye in it. You could do that like a cat eye, or like a humanish eye, or like an octopus eye, but in these colors. And then definitely, I think this tree could have some of that worked into it because, like, I mean, that's a pretty. It's meant to be a tree, and like kind of orangey yellow is a pretty natural color for wood, so that would make sense there. And he has some little brass dangly, so I think you could work in a bit of this orange around the piece just so that we're not like immediately sucked into the head. Because, like I said, the physical conversion work looks great, but it also still looks a bit like because of the way it's painted that it's like separate to the rest of the figure because it's painted kind of differently from everything else. Um, you could also try to work some sort of fur texture into the like neck and shoulders of the guy and have it like fade out like as if he's growing like a cat head or whatever out of him, or like it's like the fur is like sloughed off and rotted away further down the figure, or you could like add some little patches of it around him. Uh, but yeah, it's just like a really unique looking figure. And I'm sure like there's bits on the back needs a bit of more attention as well, but I'm sure you're gonna get around to that before the end of the day. Jim?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because he's maintained the mouth that's on the Great and Clean one. It's got this huge mouth, and it's kind of I can't remember the cartoon. It reminds me of, is it Alice in Wonderland with this mad cat with the? It reminds me a lot of that. So enjoying it greatly. It's a brilliant idea, and I love the texture fur and the contrast in the cat's head. It's painted really really well. But as Matt says, it does look like a bit popped on. You've got to settle it down in there, and I think a good opportunity would have to be I know he said it's a whip, it's not finished yet, but having some of the like pustules that are in that sort of orange um, sort of range as well. So Matt mentioned about the eye and the tree and stuff, but you've got all these like blisters and boils that are over him. You could put some orange in there as well. That'd be cool. I love the use of the purples and the greens to make him look all sickly and evil. It's a great color scheme, very very cool. Enjoying that greatly. Have a bit more blood and gore around the opening. I'd say blood for the blood god. You can never have enough on a great and clean one's wounds. I say. And then around the back as well, just make these look a little bit more fresh because they are literally open and weeping. It looks really shiny as well from the back of it. So if you weren't going to, make sure you mat it all down. That'd be good. And introduce some like rusty colours into the metals that are on him in various places, especially this handkerchief that's hanging off his back end, minging. But yeah, really, really great stuff overall. Fabulous work on the eyes. There's a lot of menace in those eyes, and it's creepy as hell. So it's disgusting and therefore excellent work. Nice one, Osland. It wouldn't be Facebook if it wasn't Facebook kicking me out and me having to restart the thing. Bear with me, please.
At least it hasn't replaced you with a robot yet.
Oh, that's not going to be far off, is it? We didn't even ask for that, did we? Joke.
No. No, I'm still not able to get rid of it as of yet, but I'm waiting for it to update so I can just try and like disable its talking privileges. I can boot actual people from the group, but not
a robot.
Apparently.
Yeah. And so it begins. Right. Anyway, on to Sasha with Bellacore, focusing on improving OSL, trying to reflect the lava's light onto the torso. The sword was inspired by Darksaber from Mandalorian, which I still haven't seen, so I don't know what that looks like. Sorry. Though the white glow didn't turn out strong as we hoped, and in feedback on lighting and color balance. So he looks awesome. He looks really cool. I love the way you've used warm and cold colors in the top of the model and sort of down towards the bottom as well. So even like on his legs, you've got like the purple tones going on in the creases and stuff, and like on his feet, he's got cold lighting on there, and his hand is very cold, and the blue is very cold, and then you've got all this warmth coming from underneath. So color balance, I think you're pretty well off, to be honest. It's looking good. There's a little bit of a reflection on the top of the knee here that doesn't sell particularly well because it hasn't got shadow around it. So I'll probably leave the glow that's down here and just try and like glaze in a little bit of shadow here and a little bit of shadow just here as well. That look really cool because as you've done with the body, right, you can't paint a casted light on something without having a shadow between the cast light and the zenithal light. It just won't sell without that light. So where the places where it really works, like on the torso and then on the leg, not so much. It's because you're missing the seclusion shadow. And speaking of the lighting on the torso, it looks really good here, but why is it not affecting this, and why is it not affecting this or these metals? It looks like the skulls might have a little bit on and the metals a little bit, but the metals are really, really bright, reflective, metallic things, and they're reflecting the light an awful lot less than his torso. So more interference colours here from the fire, I think would be really, really helpful. I can't really tell what's going on with the sword from the photos. I'm sorry, it just kind of looks like it's black and then it's like dry brushed white. So I'm going to have to pass on commenting on that. Maybe Matt will have more of an idea of what those things meant to look like. I'm sorry. But as for the fire, I love the way you have this this mad effect where it looks like the fire's actually like creeping and it looks like it's moving. Like fire is a really, really hard thing to paint because most of the time it's just, there's the shape of the flame, it's been sculpted, and you will paint it white, yellow, orange, red, black. And that's just the way everyone does it. But these ones, they actually look like they're moving, and it's really, really impressive. I'm not sure how you've done it. It's like the way you've done it in the cracks, and it looks so dynamic. It looks really, really great. The only, like, and it's pretty harsh feedback, really. Like, you could make it slightly hotter in some central places. So there's a really nice hot spot down here, and there's a really nice hot spot just here. I think you could do with some more of those, like around the center of the figure. Not too much though, because you don't want to nick too much attention from it, but it just does look a little bit too yellow, if that makes sense. That's a crazy thing to say for fire, but it sells so much better when there's a tiny, tiny little dab of like yellow, like almost white, but like yellowy white, right in the hottest spots of it. Not too many of them, like I say, but I think that would really punch it up a level for the fire. But overall, I think it's a great success, like all around. Really, really nice. The horns and the claws, you could probably do a little bit more of. These do look a little bit flat compared to the rest of the model. Not quite as much love has gone into those, so we'd like to see some striation, some color transition from light bone to dark bone. Either the tip is dark and the root is bright, or the other way around. Can't really lose. And the horns on his head, again, it's just sort of dark and then light. There's no like intermediary or color transition. So I'd probably do like the tips of the horns darker and then bring it brighter towards his head, so the attention is coming sort of towards the face. Is usually a nice way to do it on big demons. So yeah, the base rim's a little bit untidy. Watch out for that. It looks like there's a bit of extra texture left on there for some reason. So a little bit more sanding down when you're preparing it would be nice. I'm zoomed down in, so I can't see here. And then yeah, looking at the wings, the photo is kind of a bit overexposed, I think, from the back, because you've got these like really deep shadows and like details kind of blown out. But it looks like you've got the wings two different colours, but you've got the same colours in both. So this one is like primarily red with some purple, and this one's primarily purple with some red. So that's really, really cool if you've done that. The light and the dark again, so really, really nice idea. Again, just maybe try and pick out some of the ridges, because it looks like the photo is sort of, the light in the photo is doing the work for you rather than these details being picked out, if that makes sense. Forgive me if I'm wrong, I can't really tell, but if you haven't, yeah, pick out the ridges and shade the underneath of them. And that's all I got, I think. Really, really great take on Be'lakor. It's big and he's gnarly, and it's a tricky thing to paint with all these details. So, yeah, great swipe at it, Sasha. Nice one. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, I think it's lovely. Really nice color contrast, as Jim said. The blue glow, internal glow is really nice. Makes him look kind of like the Lich King from Warcraft. He's got a bit of that vibe, and then he's also got all his fiery orangeness as well. So I think you've done a really good job, and it was pretty clever. I don't know if it was on purpose or not. Like, Then you've got his sword is neutral because you could either do it blue or orange, but that would like add asymmetry to the piece. But having it actually be all white ends up working pretty much perfectly because you got that whole fire and ice contrast going on. I think on the lava, it would help a lot if I think the lava, it looks really good. I love how it's like glowing. It looks like the actual like rocky protrusions around him are glowing, like it's a big clawy hand coming up, like forming out of the earth. But the sand around his base, I think, could be a lot darker, and that would make the lava look brighter. Because like Jim said, it needs to have a bit more like brightness here. But like if you made the sand like volcanic black sand with like a very light dry brush to it, then the lava will look darker. And then you could also do some of the rocks could be like a little bit darker as well, and that would give us more of that range. Also, I think just at the bottom of the base, it looks a little bit weird how brightly lit the sand is with the lava. Where it's like if this is broad daylight, like lava doesn't really glow that bright. You just wouldn't see it. Like it would just look like melty rock or whatever. So yeah, darken that up, and that'll make it good for more contrast. On contrast as well. Yeah, I think the glow is the main objective was get this underglow. I think you're doing a really good job. Like Jim said, the leg, thigh, and knee it wraps around too much on the top, but otherwise it's very strong. But it looks like when you did kind of the bone and stuff, you just went, this is my standard bone. It's yellow and it's got like a wash over it. So if you look at his toes on his right foot, there's no call to like the callback to the lighting around it. Like they're not lit by the lava. They're not. They should be dark on top and like bright on the bottom because he's casting a shadow on them. But they're just like the exact same as the bones that are on his like sticking out his leg or in his front claws, that kind of thing. Um, and as well, I just be a bit mindful on when you're doing because he's very up top. He's very warm. If that makes sense, because he's got this very yellow bone color all around him, and I suppose it kind of balances with the base being this yellow orange, but it doesn't lend itself super strongly. It's contributing again to that thing where he feels like he's outside and it's really bright, and therefore the lava shouldn't really be that bright, relatively speaking. I think if you just added a bit more contrast to these horns, like Jim said, that would go a long way towards improving that. And also think like when you're doing horns, there is no reason they need to be yellow. Like you want them to be some kind of desaturated-ish color, but like I don't know what the hell. I think I gave him blue horns when I painted him, but like it's just such a desaturated blue that it looks like it's just like it goes up to white, but like the true color of it is blue because that worked in my scheme or whatever. Um, so yeah, just have a bit of a think about that. But in terms of like it being mostly an OSL based piece, I think it's really great. His tail looks super good. The lava itself looks really, really good. And he's obviously a very big and challenging model. So like you're lucky to even find all the pieces to paint on this guy, let alone give them all like the detail that they could have. So good work. Thanks for submitting. Hopefully that was helpful to you. Next we got Lucas Cockness doing some Death Guard, full NMM this time. Mainly on the backpack because you don't feel it's like iron, and glazes are more chalky than blending. Okay, cool. So yeah, good effort all around. I'd say this is a really nice, like it's a classic Death Guard scheme. You got every area picked out nicely. This is the brass, this is the green, this is the horrible mutated arm bit. And for the backpack with the iron, it looks like you've fallen for the classic pitfall that everyone does when they're doing NMM first time or starting off, which is that you've prioritized layering and smoothness over contrast, which is basically the opposite of what you would do. All my like I did the exact same thing, but when you're doing NMM, the most important thing is the placement of the highlights and shadows and the shape of the highlights and shadows. Having these really smooth blends, like everyone's told, like, oh, you get this really smooth gradient going up, and you're like, that's actually the opposite of what's true. Like in metal, you get reflections of things, so you get sudden changes in light and shadow. You don't get these really gradual transitions unless the metal's really, really, really scratched up, um, which these could be. But even then, you'd get bigger jumps in value, kind of going across the surface if it's in any way shiny. So what I would recommend is if you think about it like you have like 0% brightness and 100% brightness. You want to go into these like get this globe shape, then go look at like a standard like shaped like I think they're called what are they fundamentals primitives. Primitives are just like the shapes, like a sphere is a primitive, a cone is a primitive. And you can look up like what does a sphere look like? How does it reflect light? And it has round highlights. And you basically want to go have your base tone and then do like your 30% light over like most of it and then go straight up to your 80%. At least that's how I do it anyway. And I've done a couple of courses and they said, this is a quick way of doing it. Do like really big jumps and then fill in the middle bits afterwards if you don't feel like it's smooth enough, because if you don't get the shape and the placement of the highlights right, it'll never look like it's metal. It'll look like it's kind of gray. To be fair, this looks like it looks like galvanized steel. Does that make sense to you? Like that really rough, like a lamppost is made out of. It doesn't look like it's like polished steel or whatever, but it does, like, I could believe like this is made of metal, but it's not made of like shiny metal because it's got very smooth, very straight transitions all around it, and that tells us that it doesn't have a very reflective surface. But you want to get basically do kind of like, instead of going like every step up like 10%, 10%, 10%, go like straight to like 0, 20, 80, and then hold it at arm's length and like squint your eyes and go like, does it start looking like metal if you're like not out of the corner of your eye or whatever? And then you're like, okay, yeah, but you want it to be smoother, then you add in the in between steps. I think that's a more effective way of doing it. I think the NMM armor looks quite good on the legs. On the back, you've got this kind of like line in the middle, and then you've got like a line coming out. And again, that looks more like metal because you've got like stark contrast, because that's what you get in metal. If it's shiny, different faces of it look like one of them might have 100% luminosity and one of them has 0, and they're quite close to each other. The backpack, everything kind of runs from like 20 to 60 or whatever. That's about it, really. Like given that the NMM was your main focus, I think the face looks really cool. The eyes look good. I don't particularly like the way you have the base has texture paint on the sides of it. That might be a personal preference thing. I think you're better off just leaving the base black, because it tends to make it look like he's just standing on a little hill. It makes all your guys are standing on perfectly round, perfectly the same size little hills, which is a little bit weird. Whereas if you make it black, it's like you're kind of making a feature of it. You're like saying, this is the base. It's just a base. I'm not trying to hide it. This is what it is. Like, because obviously you'd be like, oh, well, the whole environment, but then you're putting it on my table. Like, why didn't you put texture paint on the ground? Like, the world he lives in has to stop somewhere, and a good place for it to stop is at the base rim, is how I would think about it. Jim, would you like to add anything there?
Yes, I think the bronze NMM is quite successful, especially when we look on these bands that are on the top of the greaves, are they? Leg plating at the back, like that's quite convincing NMM there. And this is exactly what Matt was talking about, like the starkness in the contrast, where the reflection is, and where so the shadows are where we expect them to be, like away from the light. The light's coming directly this way. Bam! Super high highlight, like it's blown out detail. Like this is what happens with reflections. And the same on this one, but to a lesser extent. So this one's obviously less exposed. This leg is generally dimmer. So this one is more exposed to the light because it's back. This one's more under him, so you'd expect that to be dimmer. Like you've absolutely nailed it on here. Really, really good. So this is what you need. Okay, I get it. It's a lot smaller area, but this is what we need up here. We need the starkness of it, right? So underneath here would be really the shadow of the photos helping you out a little bit. But yeah, it looks like the chalkiness is either due to dry brushing or the fact that you're trying to glaze with a white or a near white, which is just generally a nightmare. Like, just don't try to glaze white. It's just awful. So, or if you are, you're going to have to come back afterwards with another color. So, yeah, you need starker contrast, and it needs to be more sort of cylindrical, the highlight. So like the highlight would be like a circle or like a cylinder there, and then it would be sort of mid-tone around sort of this, like a bigger circle there, and then it would obviously be falling away to shadow on the way under it. As Matt said, like how to highlight a sphere, right? So if we just search it here quickly, how to highlight a sphere, you will see images. This is exactly what we're talking about, but yours is kind of highlighted like the same all round. So this is a brilliant example of it here. So you have this like specular highlight, Then you have the sort of the midtones here falling to shadow, and then if you're really advanced, you do the reflected light, the bounce light from up underneath it. But when we look at yours, it's just kind of a kind of broad spread all the way around the shape. It's not falling to shadow. We don't have the specular highlight. It's just kind of all spread around the area. Same for this thing. So this would be this shape would be like a cylinder. So then you just do exactly the same thing here. How to highlight a cylinder, and hopefully you'll get something very, very similar. There you go. Okay, you've got to flip it around, but see, you've got the highlight right on the top, or sometimes a little bit back. So you'd have a shadow right on the top, then the brightest highlight, then will fall away, then deep shallow, then a bounce light underneath. So again, yours is kind of a lot broader than that. It's like mostly the like mid highlight. It doesn't have like a really bright specular highlight like this example does down here. So yeah, it's a very tricky thing. These are tricky shapes to do with NMM, and it's a nightmare. And you're doing everything right so far in starting out and getting to this stage. This is all just part of the process. It's the same for everybody. So don't sweat it at all. This is not, we're not chastising you or saying you've done it wrong or anything like that. It's just part of the learning process. We've all been through it, and you'll get there with it. You will get there. So please just carry on, keep going. I love the bright edges that you've done. That's worked out really, really well. That's good detail there. So nice work there. Then the other thing, I really like this eye that you did on here. I don't think it's free-handed, like the shape of it, but obviously the eye is, and you've got great color and contrast in there, and the bright reflections on it, really, really cool. So great work there. The gun is kind of suffering the same as what this is. There's no like, the actual shape of it is not really defined. It's just some black and some grey. So when you've got flat areas like that, again, how to highlight whatever. What you'll generally find is the shadows collect towards the top of the surface, and then the light catches at the bottom of it. So it's sort of each panel, it's a nightmare to do, but people do this. The top of every panel would be dark, and then the light would collect at the bottom of it. But another good thing would just be to change the color on the gun casings in some places. Don't have the whole thing as a shiny metal. The magazine could be metal. The sighting pins on the top can be. The barrel, of course. This blade at the front, it could be an ebon blade or something, so it could be a little bit more black. You could put some blood on it, just something just to break up the shape of it, But the gun casing could be quite easily, red or green or whatever, really. So yeah, hopefully that found that helpful. That was quite an info dump, Lucas. So I hope that hasn't scared you off at all. And incidentally, yeah, I do absolutely believe in that. Like the base rim is the difference between the reality of our world and obviously the artwork that you're portraying. So there's got to be a firm black separation between the two, and it's always the base rim that does that. So yeah, hopefully you haven't got a whole army that have to scrape those off, but yeah, just food for thought in the future. Right, moving on to Daniel finally. So first Space Wolf complete, struggled with grey in general, tried to do the own style. Don't see any grey. What I do see is some awesome blue, like really amazing blue. I don't see any grey on this dude, I'm afraid to say. So if you've gone for like a bluish grey, then you've overcooked it, son. But like, there's no diss because this looks awesome. It's really, really nice. Gorgeous blue. I love the purple reflections and how you've got it really, really specular in some places. Really, really bright. I love it. It's really, really cool. The only issue I've got with it is that's come from somewhere else, whether there's like plasma charges flying across the battlefield or whatever, purple warning light klaxons going off or whatever, but it's not affecting his environment. It's not affecting the snow or the rock. Is my only issue with that. We don't know where that light is coming from. It's really well executed and it's nice, but I think it needs to be included in the base somehow. The red on the plasma pistol is so much better than the red of the shoulder. I think you need to do something with the shoulder panel. It looks really quite flat compared to really very flat compared to the rest of it. You've got this epic contrast from black to near white, all these transitions, interference colors, reflections, double reflections, blah, amazing. And then the red is just red, really, really dull compared. Like the gold is really, really selling. It looks incredible as well. So like, it's just a shame. There needs to be something on this, whether it's another decal or a freehand or something, or just more travel of the light. Basically, it's that pauldron's like, you look at the other pauldron, you're like, whoa, we've got freehand, we've got reflections, we've got damage, we've got shadow, uh, everything, and then the other one's just like flat red, which is the same for the knee pad as well. I think, yeah, the knee pad looks really, really flat as well. So yeah, a little more love on the red, man. Don't leave the red out. Great work on the face and the hair. You've got some great contrast in there and some great detail. So awesome work there. These heads are really stupidly tiny, so that's awesome work. Same with the plasma. Like, those coils look really, really great. How they're heating up like that. That's a real success. Not quite sure about the highlighting of the Aquila. I think there's a little bit too much shadow in there on the chest eagle thing. So I'd probably pull the shadow back, like right into the recesses, and I wouldn't do that thing as well where you sort of go like the inside of the wing is shadowed and then the edges are bright, like on both sides. Sometimes it's nice to do a reflection like down it this way, if that makes sense. So you're following the highlight of the armor, because you've got a highlight here and a highlight here, but that's interspersed with a shadow on the Aquila. So it'd be nice if the end of the wings here was in shadow, and then this section was in shadow, and the highlight actually joined up the blue in the armor, and it's the same sort of on the purple side here. So you can play with the reflections that way, make sure that it's a bit more readable that way, because it looks like the light is bouncing off the model in the same ways. So that would be quite nice. And then finally, I think I want to end on a positive, not on a negative. So the yellow, I'm not sure if that was gold or yellow on the shoulder pauldrons there, but that's really nicely shaded. Either way, you could get away with that looking at either. I think it's more yellow rather than gold, to be honest. The gold looks a little bit more shinier. So if that is supposed to be gold, I'd probably try and get a little bit more highlight punched into it. But yeah, really, really great, sexy looking Space Wolf overall. So yeah, really nice work. But yeah, sorry, it just doesn't read as great to me. But still, I'd rate this very, very highly. So nice work, Daniel. Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry at all about him not being Greg. Like, you get a lot of weird haters out there who are like, oh, it's not in whatever the codex scheme is. They're generally people who don't actually know anything about painting anything, to be honest with you. And also, it would have been more of a valid complaint like 25 years ago, when the only difference between your Marines was how you painted them, and you'd have the odd guy. Because, like, literally like, no one's going to see this and be like, oh, it's a Night Lord or an Ultramarine or whatever. It's obviously a Space Wolf. He can be in different colored armor. Like, that's why they've made the models so different.
Good point.
Yeah, color armor looks cool. I think you, like Jim said, there's like this motivated lighting where there's purple lights hitting it from a bunch of different places, which is cool and cyberpunky looking. But it has like, it doesn't look in any way connected with the base. The base is this very dull, generic cake frosting looking cork base thing. He looks like he's a space warrior and he should be like on an asteroid or something, and like he's from like a 90s cartoon in the morning and there's all this stuff going on around him. So I'd maybe rethink the base, or do something with the base where there is purple and blue like spattered onto it, or like tinted into everything, because especially snow, like snow isn't even white when you look at it. Snow is like yellow and blue and all of the colors around it, because it's bouncing every environmental light off of it and refracts light and all that kind of shit as well. So yeah, I would, if you want to do this cool Space Warrior armor thing, you don't have to put them on generic Space Wolf basing. Like, they go all over the galaxy. It's fine. And he can not wear his helmet in space, because apparently Space Marines can get away with that. It's grand. Agree with everything Jim said. Shoulder pad needs a decal or a freehand or something on there. The dags on the other shoulder pads look great. The NMM is a bit like stock looking on the Aquila, and then I'm not sure about the belts, like the kind of like WWE winner's belt thing he has in the front. It's not really reading as gold. Like in certain places, yeah, but overall, I think there's no secondary highlights. Essentially, is the problem, and you have like, so yeah, it goes like main highlight here, and then you have the main highlight with the other faces like opposite it. But it just needs a little bit, like where it goes to shadow, do like a little tiny scratchy line there to show that the plane has changed and it's reflecting off somewhere else. And then there's like the odd bit that could have, like, if we're being really nitpicky, like this was for a competition or whatever, you know, his tabard, not his tabard, his loincloth is not highlighted to the same standard with the fur and the skin, and this like random thing on his back isn't with his hand. I would just cut that off if it was me, because what is it? Why is it there? Does he not have enough stuff going on already? If you didn't want to paint it, just don't have it there. That's my motto all the time. Less model means less painting, and then you can do your painting better. But yeah, I think the armor overall looks great. Like the NMM highlighting on it looks stupendous, and it's way more interesting than like powder blue, which is like what Spaceballs normally are. So I don't think you should like in any way be critical of yourself for making the model look better than the stock scheme. So there you go. That's a positive note to be finishing on. Thanks for submitting for the first time. Love to have you back again. Thanks to everyone who submitted for this month. It's always a bit quiet in the summer, so we'll look forward to having you again for July. It'll be open until the end of the month, and we'll see you then.